China has made a decision to end Hong Kong's free status. At the end of May 2020, the National People's Assembly, the highest legislative body in the People's Republic of China, voted to implement a new security act in Hong Kong that will give the Chinese regime the opportunity to pursue those propagating speeches, ideas, and political messages in the currently autonomous city. A law that will allow the Chinese dictatorship to deploy its security and intelligence services to Hong Kong to put an end to any symptoms of dissent. In this image that you see on screen, Xi Jinping himself is voting in favor of this law. This image is a reflection of how China is slowly swallowing the formerly known Pearl of the East.
I can't imagine living under the shadow of the secret police. It seems that the last firewall that protects our freedoms is about to collapse. Alan, a Hong Kong University student, in a statement to the Asia Nikkei Review. The model of one country, two systems that had been guaranteed to the people of Hong Kong is being completely broken down. This is the saddest period in Hong Kong. I have no words to express in words the sense of despair that we have. Dennis Kwok, pro-democratic member of Hong Kong's Legislative Chamber. Hong Kong hedge funds explore the exit as a national security law looms, the Financial Times.
This is a topic that we are especially concerned about on VisualPolitik, and something that we have already talked about in a recent video here on the channel. However, one question remained unanswered. How has the international community reacted to what looks like the beginning of the end of what has been, until now, one of the freest territories in the world? Well, the truth is that the international condemnation has been clearly lukewarm. Lukewarm because, in general, practically nothing has been said or done. So far, the country that has made the most noise has been the United States, which has threatened to stop considering Hong Kong as an autonomous territory. And that could mean that some of the advantages this city has in its relations with the United States would soon disappear. We're talking about privileges such as reduced tariffs, free movement of people and capital, almost unlimited access to US technology, and even the absence of restrictions on exchanges with the dollar.
Big action was taken today by the Trump administration against the Communist Chinese Party. Secretary of State Pompeo notifying Congress that Hong Kong is no longer autonomous and no longer warrants special treatment under U.S. law.
However, so far it has limited threats, only in the commercial sphere, which would be of little relevance because direct exports from Hong Kong to the United States are minimal. However, the United States is not the only country that is taking action. Indeed, despite the lukewarm international response and beyond the application of sanctions that would mostly punish the very people of Hong Kong, some measures have been put on the table that are as ingenious as they are potentially effective. Friends, can Hong Kong be saved? Listen up.
Metropolis or Hong Kong 2.0?
Let's see. If there is one country that has a particular responsibility for what could happen in Hong Kong, it is the United Kingdom. After all, almost half of all Hong Kong citizens were born when Hong Kong was still governed by the British Crown, and that is precisely what has made the government of this country speak out. Of course, in a very different way than of the United States. Look at this headline, because here you can see that shots have clearly been fired.
June 3rd, 2020. Boris Johnson pledges to admit 3 million from Hong Kong to the UK. New York Times.
Yes, that's right. The British authorities' first reaction has been to extend a kind of lifeline for all Hong Kong people who may feel threatened by the growing control of the Chinese dictatorship. And as you all know, Hong Kong was part of the United Kingdom up until the 1st of July 1997, the date on which the transfer of its sovereignty to Chinese hands was effected. However, despite being part of the United Kingdom until 1997, Hong Kong citizens didn't have British citizenship since back in the 1960s, but only the right to apply for what is known as British Overseas Nationality, a status that gives any of the approximately 350,000 Hong Kongers that are eligible for it a British passport and the possibility of using the services of embassies and consulates of the UK throughout the world. It is a status, however, that does not grant holders the right to live or work in the UK. Well, what Boris Johnson's government is currently proposing would go much further. On the one hand, allow the possibility that the nearly 3 million people who were born in Hong Kong before 1997 may reapply for this status. On the other hand, to extend the rights this status would entail. You see, the idea that the government has put on the table is that this status as a British overseas national would now allow all holders to stay in the UK for 12 months. Holders can easily apply to be able to work and study in the country, and the 12-month period can be extended without any difficulty. And not only that, the idea circulating in the British government is that this method could also become a convenient path, a shortcut to full British citizenship.
If China continues on this path and implements this national security legislation, we will do so. We will allow holders of British overseas nationals' passports to come to the UK and apply to work and study for extended periods of 12 months and, in turn, provide them with a path to future citizenship. Dominic Raab, UK Foreign Minister.
That is, the UK is giving Hong Kong citizens a whole new escape route. But hold on a minute, is London thinking that suddenly hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Hong Kong residents will pack up and move to the UK? Well, obviously not. However, if this initiative were put into action, most Hong Kong nationals would have a very attractive path for escaping the excesses of the Chinese government. That is, anyone who is eligible could easily escape whenever they see fit, without having to go through the complicated procedure of seeking political asylum. For example, if, as the Chinese government seems to want, its control over Hong Kong and the freedoms of the Hong Kong people are to be made stricter, many politicians, entrepreneurs, dissidents and students could, at any time, move to a safe haven with all the guarantees that they would need. And not only that, at the same time, it would push the Chinese government to think twice before crossing a red line, because doing so could lead to a complete brain drain and talent exodus. And this is a situation that does have a precedent. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Ugandan dictator Idi Amin and the Kenyan government expelled tens of thousands of people of southern Indian descent, who in many cases had a British passport. In 1972, and faced with this situation, the British government of Conservative Edward Heath made it possible for thousands of these refugees to settle in the UK. Nearly 30,000 people followed this path, leading to one of the most socially and economically successful migrant cohorts in the country. Friends, we are facing an ingenious solution that, under the circumstances, could be the best possible response to China's threat. Unlike sanctions, not only does it not punish the Hong Kong people themselves, but it actually gives them a whole new lifeline. And it is a move that has certainly infuriated China. Xi Jinping's government has already made it clear that it is absolutely opposed to this measure and has threatened retaliation. And when Beijing talks about retaliation, you can be sure that they're talking about financial retaliation, which, by the way, raises serious doubts about whether London will eventually carry out this move. Let's not forget the weight that China could bring to bear on the post-Brexit economy. In any case, the question that comes up is, but what if, with the support of the international community, the British government granted this privilege to all Hong Kong people? Wouldn't that be a master response to Xi Jinping's expansionist veracity? Wouldn't it be a way to make Hong Kong a symbol of the UK's commitment to free countries in the fight against the expansion of authoritarianism? Well, it doesn't all end here. Another idea has been put forward, a much more original idea that could spell revolution. Something that I would say probably won't happen, but in any case, it is interesting to keep in mind. Could you imagine what would happen if the UK pushed for a creation of a kind of new Hong Kong in its own territory? Now, stay with me, I haven't quite lost the plot. It's an idea that the Adam Smith Institute has put forward, and the truth is that it wouldn't be as far-fetched as it might seem at first glance. Following the example of the square mile and, above all, Johnson's proposal for free ports that we have already talked about on VisualPolitik, the United Kingdom could enable a space within its territory where any Hong Kong citizen or company could be freely transplanted. A space that would have regulations and a tax system similar to what currently exists in Hong Kong today. In other words, we're talking about creating a special economic zone that could become the best connection point between Asia and Europe, whilst giving Hong Kong citizens even more options. And no, it's actually not such a crazy approach. Keep in mind that much of the UK's economic success over the past few decades has centred on the square mile and the special regulations that the UK approved for the financial industry. This would basically be something similar. In addition, it would also be a way for the United Kingdom to increase its competitiveness, strengthen its ties with the Asian continent, and attract business and talent just when it needs it most, having carried out Brexit. A bold move, don't you think? Well, that's where we'll leave it for now. But the UK aside, there is another country that is also following very closely all that happens in the former Pearl of the East. Now listen up.
A restless first cousin.
Taiwan is keeping a close eye on the events that are taking place in Hong Kong. And in Taipei, they are clear about one thing. If Xi Jinping's government gets its way with Hong Kong, its next move may be to increase pressure on this island. An island that is becoming a last refuge for many dissidents and political players who refuse to bend the knee to the Chinese dictatorship. Now, that helps explain, for example, why applications for residence permits in Taiwan by Hong Kong citizens are skyrocketing.
Number of Hong Kongers seeking residency spikes. The number of people from Hong Kong applying for residency in Taiwan last year rose 41%, the Taipei Times.
Of course, this also carries a risk, and in Taipei, they have many doubts about which path to choose. Now let me explain. On the one hand, they have a great deal of sympathy for Hong Kong residents who have rebelled against the Chinese attempt to increase control over this city. But on the other hand, it's not clear that angering the Chinese government too much may be the smartest option. For the time being, Article 18 of the Hong Kong and Macau Act provides that the Taiwanese government will provide the necessary assistance to residents of Hong Kong and Macau whose security and freedom are immediately threatened for political reasons. In practice, however, this law has not been developed and the process for asylum applications, deadlines, and available budget is unclear. So far, the Taiwanese government has not wanted to open up this Pandora's box. That is precisely why President Tsai Ing-wen, who, as we already discussed in previous videos, is not exactly very friendly with Beijing, announced at the end of May the formation of a task force to make a final decision and to ensure once and for all the rights that Hong Kong citizens who apply for asylum in Taiwan will have, one way or another. And this begs the question, should the international community resolutely support the Tsai Ing-wen government to make Taiwan the great refuge in the face of authoritarianism and the growing expansionism of the Xi Jinping regime? This is one of the questions that international news should take notice of at this point in time. Hong Kong is more than just a city. It is now becoming a symbol of where things could go over the next few years. And we honestly believe that one of the worst things that could happen is that economic problems will make the Chinese government give full prominence to its political agenda. And the trade war doesn't help there. Anyway, that's where things stand. But what response do you think the international community should give to China's growing meddling in Hong Kong's local affairs? Leave us your answer in the comments, and if you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit the like button. And also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. We thank you. Regards to you all, and we'll see you on the next one.